Oh hey, you see me setting up my filming backpack because I have a date I've been looking for a long while. I'm going to find out how sim racing hardware is made, and I hope you want to find out with me. Cue the intro. Greetings from me, you're watching Wromwrom, the channel sharing the joy of sim racing. Welcome to a very special video about the Simucube active pedals. Thanks to all those who come here often, especially those who subscribe, and even more are patrons. My name is Serta and I will be your host for this video. I don't know about you, but I'm always interested in the question of how did they make it? I watch the extras on DVDs and Blu-rays to find out more. I watch interviews with all creative people all around out of my eternal curiosity of the "but how" question. Sim racing being my passion, of course I'm interested not only in the products themselves, but also in how they are built, how different, extremely creative people, engineers, software developers, product designers, marketing, all come together to build what at the end of the day we hold in our hands, or in this case, get under our feet. Simucube were kind enough to invite us to Tampere in Finland to talk to us about how they came up, developed and released their active pedals 3 years ago. They gave us the opportunity to talk to different people at Simucube and learn how the idea for these very special force feedback pedals came to be, how they formed the idea into a product, how they released the product, and how they went further in their thinking so as to release the Active Pedals Pro, the less expensive version of the pedals. This is a journey of discovery, of finding out a lot of things, and of how a team that works together and with the community ends up with a completely new set of products that by Simucube's account are extremely successful. Because up until that point, they were renowned for their wheelbases, and that was it. Come with me to find out the story of the Active Pros. Where does an idea like the active pedals take hold, and where does the team work that builds those and refines them month by month? In my visit to their headquarters, I checked out their offices. Apart from the team offices, they have quiet open spaces to relax, and their coffee and beverage rest stop is also open with a big glass roof. They even have a corner with board games and some books. Because to be creative, you have to have the opportunity to take a break and think about something completely different. Or just sit with your colleagues enjoying a coffee or some water or whatever. These are the signs of a company that thrives on community, internally as well as externally. This community feeling is very typical for Simucube.
Community has been a very big reason we were able to get good features and better features and refine everything. So
we hear feedback from community drivers, sim racers, whoever. We hear quite a lot of feedback that what do people wish to see and what would they like to have in the product.
So it's no surprise that the core of the idea came from the community, since some users had asked for force feedback pedals.
Idea of force feedback pedal, it's not unique to us. At least before we launched it, we had few times customers asking us, please make force feedback pedal. I'm not sure what they actually meant by that, but in our head it was meaning like this. Okay, this is force feedback pedal, our version of that.
Antero, who is always searching to make the impossible possible, which is what engineers do, set himself up to imagine how to make it possible. Then the idea struck when a client of the robotics arm wanted something very special.
We had a motor control client for industrial application who wanted to have touchscreen simulation with motors. So they needed a precise touch simulation based on motors and robotics. And we were the developer of that system. So we developed technology to generate precisely controlled force touch that emulates a finger, and those are being used in mobile phone manufacturers. Combining this force control technology and all the know-how in the motor control, and also understanding of sim racing, we kind of figure out there could be pedal that could be motorized. So we can create any pedal with one hardware. And we can give control to the user to define what is the functionality and feeling and effects of the pedal.
And then
This is just lots of bigger version of that, and also lots of new development has gone from there. But basically in the touchscreen system we had motor, linear actuator and the load cell, and the controller board, of course. So it's basically the same concept, but of course it has been recreated to match the needs of pedal application. I started to make some calculations and drawing concepts, how it can be built and how much it would cost.
after some time,
It was months at least.
the idea was ready to move forward internally and see if it was even possible to make a product out of it, which leads us to
I just talked to our people and demonstrated the idea and basically pitched the idea here in-house to get feedback and see what others think and should we do it or not. We just decided, all right, just try to build one prototype.
Now a pedal is kind of easy to do. Measure the movement of a piece or the pressure produced on a piece, translate it on a scale, boom, you have your throttle and brake, and you can do something similar with a clutch. But giving some kind of force feedback while measuring the force on the pedal and have it all make sense to anybody driving on a sim has some intricacies.
The most challenging thing is that the human leg is not simple. It's kind of, it has muscles that are not like rigidly fixed in the leg. It's kind of massive and flexible same time, and also when you press it with toe or knee, it's kind of completely different dynamics that go in the motor and controller. It's kind of challenging to get it stable in the first place. And other thing is that when you get it stable, it should be very, very fast. When you hit it, it will not feel like you're pressing a motor or virtualized pedal. It should feel like hydraulic. The human leg is complex, and also the requirements are extreme because you always get quite good sense that what is real and what is fake. It's very hard to kind of replicate.
The team expanded, of course.
I just took over some of parts Tero had done, and we also developed the whole communication and SC link system at the same time, so it was this kind of combined development project.
The advantages of the product or the idea at the end were not so clear at the beginning.
But the team moved it along and went full engineer.
We started with the ultimate, with making no compromises, and then went from there.
Part of the no compromise thing was getting rid of USB.
There has been a lot of problems with people using multiple USB devices, so it's always a hassle to control multiple USB devices and keep switching them, adding hubs, and there are always some kind of communication problems. We feel like a lot of customers have felt like that, and we also felt like that. So we wanted to make a centered system so we could control it more easily, and it would be more easier to plug in the PC. So it was a more simple system for people to use. This approach gives us a lot of freedom to how many devices we can add to the whole system, so we kind of had no limit. Ethernet is, it has a lot of bandwidth, and it's fast enough.
And how do you make them feel like racing pedals?
It's all feedback based. We have a load cell sensor there and control electronics that will close the loop and give all the time the same response.
It was an iterative process. It took a lot of research, as you said, like multiple tries to find a way to how to approach it. And when we find the way, then we're just gonna adjust it and tweak it more and more and more. We did research this stuff and read some papers so we can have more understanding about it. So that gave us some approach ideas. We had people that tested and told us how it should feel and what's the problem with this feel at the moment, and we had that kind of a thing on that iterative process.
Finally, the proof was there that it was possible to build such a pedal and make it feel right. It took...
Maybe it was 6 months
to get there.
It was at least 6 months of prototyping and development of the first algorithms. It was surprisingly challenging to create good algorithm that will control the motor and read the load cell and behave nicely. Once it's looking like it's basically working, then we kind of launched a real project to develop it.
And while I'm explaining it as if it was clearly defined, we humans are no binary. While the team was still working on a usable prototype, they were already thinking about how to build it. Enter the supply chain management, the people who see to it that all the parts needed to build such a pedal are there. There's people who put them together and everything else.
Already that phase you should have a, like we call about bill of materials. What do you need? And so we are starting from there. And it's kind of developing. It's not only, it's kind of the normal R&D process in a sense. R&D is working all the time, so it's not fixed there yet. So you will change and modify.
We had specific people from like manufacturing side, like purchasing. They were pretty much helping the team to find the components that we can buy in good quality and volumes with reasonable price. And also the engineers and developers, they are very much realistic type of persons. They don't kind of, usually they don't go in like finding solution that doesn't work in real life.
We are part of the R&D phase. We look for the suppliers, how to make it. Yeah, practically industrialization of the ideas.
And the prototype was not a prototype anymore. It wasn't a maybe, it was a project. A plan to produce a product to push towards the pedal. See what I did there?
We gathered a team, we made the plans, we made the visions, and we started just to work on that. And goals in our mind. We wanted something that has like 150 kilograms of force and it should have these all kinds of effects, and so we basically specified the vision and specified the product, and then we started to design.
Tero sees it as an engineer would.
The idea, the driving thing is not sales for me. Some people are more sales oriented, but myself it's kind of challenge and what I can create with my skills. I want to create. I'm a creator, basically.
The team being mostly technical.
The team was consisting mostly developers and engineers, also like production engineers. There were no marketing or sales people during that period, and they were just jumping in later.
But as said, now the big idea was having to deal with the realities of building a sellable product.
Also, sometimes we just decided, okay, it doesn't exist, we have to kind of make a custom one. For example, this load cell is a custom component. You don't find it anywhere in the market.
A lot had to change to make it a product.
A proof of concept has had everything was different. We didn't have Ethernet, we didn't have the same electronics, we didn't have anything the same. So it was totally different starting point. So for the prototype, we needed to develop the whole electronics, the whole thing that it was designed for this. And that way we could refine the electronics and software to this direction, so it would feel a lot better when we get to the prototype point. So that was our idea. So we just, first it was proof of concept that it could be done, but it wasn't that, it didn't feel that good yet. But for the prototype, we tried to focus on getting the feeling right by designing the electronics and code.
Where I jumped in, there was already basically the proof of concept was done, and I think it was Tero or someone other that have made already first mechanical prototype of it, but it was like way different looking that it's now. Concept was the same, but all the parts were like way different, like making it look more like a product and make it easier to assemble and trying to integrate different parts to make part count. Try to simplify it as much as possible, like what is the core principle of the functionality, and take everything else off.
And this took a long while, because it's one thing to make something unique and good, it's another to make something unique, good and sellable.
From first prototype to the production ready product, it was almost 2 years.
On the other hand, moving away from the prototype also means reducing parts.
PCBs were like this big and we had 2 of them, so at the first stage.
Finding parts which do the same but don't cost an arm and a leg.
Because if we specify that we need like really tight tolerances, so these all work like it should, then those parts would cost a lot. It's always like finding the compromise that we get working product, but we are able to also manufacture it.
And that's when the supply chain management shines, as they are in constant conversation with the engineers.
It's a cooperation all the time. So basically, if there is something we cannot have on stock or somebody else, then we are looking for the supplier who can make it based on our design. We are not limited to components which are on stock. We might also make our own designs.
In hardware team, when we are designing a product like future products, the main sparring partner in here is the supply chain.
They had been already all the time, but now's the time to make a product.
Because it's easy to make 10 samples look nice, but to make them continuously, it's not so. And then you have to set up the production. It's kind of assuring the supply chain means also the manufacturing part. So you plan the manufacturing, how much you need, how much our sales colleagues are selling, and match everything, take into account the lead times of the production and lead time of logistics and where you should have the inventories, everything in that.
And make a product of high quality, which is where all too many companies skim and save money, much to the chagrin of us buyers.
What we define as our quality inspection, so that's everything we set up.
And the product was, well, let's geek out for a moment, shall we?
This is basically built from our know-how, or based on our know-how. We have been working a long time with these robotics components and automation components. And this linear stage here is just made for robotics. It's not consumer product at all. And we decided to go with that because they are very reliable, very accurate, and we know for sure that they will last long times. So this is basically what is inside active pedal. There's a linear axis. This is industrial component used in robotics. And then we have a load cell that will measure the force, the pressure, and then here we have a motor, electric motor. And here we have the controller. It's all custom made for this product, and this is basically what Granite devices have been doing all the time, custom motor controllers, and this is one of those. Here is just a programmable microcontroller that will drive the power electronics and do the measurements of the load cell and measurement of the position of the sensor, and then creating the effects that we want. The motor is the actuator. It will make this force, and but the sensor is that sensor and the software is basically controlling the motor. The motor is just the producer of the force. And when you press here, the load cell will compare, or the board here will compare the force to your target force. You have a configurable curve in the software, in tuner software, and based on the position of the pedal and the force, we control the motor based on that. And because everything is based on sensors, the position sensor and force sensor, it doesn't matter if the friction of the system will change, because it will automatically compensate it. So no matter how worn out the screw is or the mechanics, it will still produce the same exact profile and feeling. So it's kind of maintenance free basically.
And then came the moment to let the world know about this wondrous new thing.
The marketing and sales teams joined once we had this production running or starting up.
Cue marketing and sales.
I believe it was back in the end of 21 when the marketing first got to know about the active pedal technology and the new product.
And Simucube noticed one thing.
It was too late. It was kind of difficult step to take.
When I joined Simucube, the product was design-wise kind of ready. The looks, we knew how it's gonna look. They were doing mainly the software and the final touches.
In any case, the marketing started thinking about it, even if there were some bumps in the road.
Our first challenge was to find out that how do we launch this in a big way.
At the beginning of 22, we started to properly plan the launch of active pedal, and that time, even though I personally didn't really understand what the technology is or what does active pedal mean, I had this gut feeling that it is a significant product. I had that feeling that we're gonna have to do a big launch for it. We're gonna have to do a lot of marketing for it. We're gonna have to do things a little bit differently than what we were used to doing.
Also because this was the first big launch in a long time for the company.
We had been kind of quiet before that, like just developing the pedal, and people knew us mainly about the wheelbase. So when we came to the pedal market, we knew it has to be something big.
And how do you sell something so unique as force feedback pedals? The team had to get working.
How do we make sure that people understand all the possible, what you can do with the pedal?
To make people understand the technology behind it was the main point.
Yeah.
So how can a pedal replicate a real car, and what is possible with this pedal to make people understand that it's software that makes it possible, and nothing like this has been done before.
Yeah.
So really the replication of a real car and really feeling the pedal with all your senses was maybe the main kind of driving power for the marketing message that we tried to include. And then we really wanted to kind of validate that product with then professional racers and drivers that we were able to also include in the product launch later on, and also in the content that we then do. So really showcase how a rally driver, a F1 driver, a GT driver can utilize this exact product in their everyday daily training.
Of course, one proven strategy is to get testimonials. People within the industry who can vouch for your product.
We contacted some drivers and some professionals from the industry to validate it from their point of view. And we always wanted 100% honest feedback, so that people, when they watch us, they get the honest truth about the product. So in the product launch, we had Ossi Oikarinen, who's former F1 engineer. He visited our office a few months or 1 month before the launch and was testing it. And then we had professional drivers giving input and helping us with the launch. And then we had Olli Pahkala, who's former sim racer, and then he has his Overpower rig company in Finland. So he had also validating it, that how good it is and what can you do with it. And then we knew that once we launch, it's not ready. We are still going to update the software and everything. So then when people started to know about the product, we got more drivers in to do profiles and content around it. And we still do. We still do active pedal profiles with the drivers and develop things further. But back in the days, it was really important to get third-party people from outside of the company.
And the pedals hit the market.
Yeah, the feedback already in the launch, we had like a live chat going on, was amazing, and that was actually a big moment for the team, like Simucube team. That was really, it had something special in it.
The reception, I think that was the most surprising, and after we launched it, the first few months at the Discord, that was like surprising and weird time.
And then, well, we know what happened then, but for the team, finishing the development of what now are the Ultimates was only the beginning of the new chapter. While the idea when developing what are now called the Ultimates was build it and they will come,
We don't compromise. We want to play for sure, and we believe that there's a market for very good quality.
Simucube was aware of the price and we're already learning a ton and a half of things from their buyers and their community with whom they were and are in constant communication.
It was quite soon after we finished the Ultimate version. This first version, of course, is like overkill for many people, and we also tend to say that what is worth doing, it's worth overdoing. The first product is Ultimate, it's all that, it's kind of overkill, will last forever almost, and it's all the components are just like oversized basically. And then the next logical step, of course, is to kind of figure out how we can make it a little bit less overkill without sacrificing any of the qualities. We made studies of active pedal Ultimate users, how much pressure they are actually using. Then we can use that number to kind of calculate the proper size of the motor and other components to kind of not to spend too much extra.
First, we need to wait for some results on the Ultimate, and I think it was pretty clear that the reception on the market was quite good on it. So we got an idea on how it sells, and also if there's any issues on the product side that we would want to fix, and clearly there was some aspects on how the product is actually mechanically built is not very optimal. So it was quite clear that even if we wouldn't have done the Pro, we would have somehow started the process to optimize the product anyway. We quite quickly gravitated towards making the product more accessible to bigger market, which obviously in our case means to lower the price point.
When people first received the first pedals, we were at the Discord and we were hearing opinions and ideas there at the same time when they got the pedals, because we had people testing it, but they didn't really have all the ideas and all the use cases. But at the start, we had so influx of ideas from the Discord, so we were all the time at the Discord and asking how people feel, what we should do better and improve, and what kind of features they would want there. So at start we added a lot of features in the first few months because people have so many ideas, and we were motivated to add more stuff there.
The engineers found that maybe we can do this in a more efficient way, that we learned so much when we were doing active pedal, and now when community and people were giving feedback and they learned also through that, then they started to think that if we would do active pedal again, how would we do it and how much more efficient it would be, and then maybe we would also get the price a little bit down.
The thinking process was to make as good of a product as possible, no matter of the price really. No compromises, as good as we can do, and really set the standard for this product.
So they went about thinking what they could change to make them more affordable without giving up the quality, or as Tero puts it,
It's kind of right sizing.
1 year of development, 1 year getting the supply chain organized, because they had a new goal, and that was getting within a certain price range.
The biggest gripe, I think, was the price. So our main point with that was the keep the same functionality but get the price down.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but not strictly. There was also the product placement on, for example, the Ultimate back then could produce the 150 kilograms of force on the pedal face, and the Pro, I think the first estimate for requirement we made was like 90 kilos, but it ended up being 110, I think.
Part of it, as we know, was reducing the size, but part of it was reducing parts, finding better ways to put the parts together. If you compare the Ultimates and the Pros, you'll notice the difference, for example, in the main axle. In the end, handling their first foray into pedals as the prototype for their second product, and it still took them 2 years to release the Pros. If you like what you see, how about supporting us? A like, a subscribe, or even becoming a patron. Patrons get access to exclusive content and are involved in our decisions. Help us grow with your support. What will the future bring? Based on the story of the active pedals, it's clear they are already working on the next thing, but they are understandably coy about it.
Yeah, sure, of course we have ideas.
And it may very well have to do with their pedals.
We are researching for things around this. We see this active pedal being one of our main products.
The work doesn't stop with Pro either, but the difference now is that it's not a new news for the community, so they already know, or should know at least, the main points of active pedal, and now we're just trying to bring the price tag down so it's more approachable for a wider audience. Still, we are really aware that it's not for everyone.
We are always expanding our pedal lineup, so there's going to be new products.
And while the consequence, based on the wheelbases, would be to expect an active pedal sport, there was no way for me to pry that information out of anybody.
It would be obvious to say that it would be yes, but I don't have any timetable on it, so and I can't promise that it will never come. So I don't know.
That kind of product, if it's coming, it hasn't brought to our table yet. So.
And while there is a handbrake setting on the active pedals, Simucube are mostly sure it's not going to be that.
If you want to modify the pedal physically on your own, you have the possibility to make it a handbrake. We don't sell the parts for handbrake in our web store, like for the physical changes, but if you want to modify it on your own, you have the possibility in the software to make it a handbrake.
Whatever comes next, evolution or revolution, one thing's for sure. It's going to be well thought out, well discussed, and the community is going to have a say on it. Because this seems to be the way Simucube do things, and we cannot wait to see what comes next. What about you? What do you think will be the next idea from Simucube? And did you find this video interesting? Would you want to see more of this kind of content? Let us know in the comments what you think. And of course, we would like to thank Simucube for their support in organizing all interviews and giving us the time and information needed to make this video. I now know much more about how the active pedals came to be and about how Simucube as a team comes together to make engineering a reality.